Hey guys, welcome to another episode of She Knows Arsenal. My name is Jessica and I am your host. And you can follow me on Twitter at It's Jessinho. So I guess after I heard about the Thomas Partey news that he was going to be out again with the hamstring issue, and it was going to be for the Leeds game and the Benfica game, and Tierney is still out, I thought it'd be a good idea to get somebody with professional experience with sports. Sports and injuries to come on and talk to us about it. So I brought on a doctor. His name is Dr. Raj, and he's my special guest for today. So we're going to have a conversation about Arsenal's injury woes and how the congested schedule for this season has affected their injuries. So let's go ahead and get started. Hey, Dr. Raj, how are you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. So I only have you here for a short time, so I want to go ahead and get the ball rolling. But for the viewers and the listeners that are here in the chat box and they're going to listen later, can you tell them just kind of what you do, just in a short sentence or two?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a physiotherapist who specializes in sports medicine and sports science. And I'm an Arsenal fan, so there you go.
Whoop. Okay, so yeah, I was going to ask you that too and see like if you were an Arsenal fan. I figured you had some love for the club because a lot of the information that you put out there is Arsenal information. So I love that. So, you guys, if you don't follow Dr. Raj yet on Instagram, you should, because he talks about injuries from his perspective as a physical therapist and a sports scientist. And he also has a really informative YouTube channel where he goes into depth on injuries of top athletes like Hazard, Neymar, and Patrick Mahomes. So, if you're not plugged into everything that Dr. Raj does, you should be. And all of his information is in the description box. So you can find that after the show. So I wanted to jump straight in for Thomas Partey and talk a little bit about him. He's a player that had relatively no injury problems before he got to the Emirates. And he's been out injured for 8 games so far and has only played 3 full 90 minutes for Arsenal. His injury has been described as a strain to the left hamstring. In your professional opinion, what is the catalyst for this continued hamstring issue? And was Arsenal's decision to rush him back for the Spurs match a possible reason for him being unable to recover properly?
Sure. So firstly, the hamstring issue is a new one. Before it was on the front of his thigh. So
Okay.
it's a new issue related most likely, yes, because so let's start back. Let's wind it back. You have a player with the restart, you have a congested schedule during the restart, even for Partey in Spain. He then comes around on a short turnaround time, doesn't have a preseason with the team, and then he's playing in a new league that has a higher intensity level, the Premier League does. And then also, he's playing with a new team where he very likely wants to impress the team as well. Merkel touched on this recently. He said that the player had a certain anxiety about him of trying to fit in and be that high performer. So all those things lead to increased injury risk, all compounded by the congested schedule of this season. So once he picks up one injury, which of course is unfortunate, he has a layoff. So now his fitness levels drop. So now as he's coming back, there's increased injury risk again. There's certain increased injury risk after any muscle injury anyways. Comes back for Tottenham. Now before Tottenham, from my understanding, he was stress tested in full 3 different times and he passed every test. So whether he was rushed back or not, that's I would go based on the testing. From my understanding, he wasn't rushed back. My guess was even before that match is that he was probably allocated about 60 minutes. He got through about 44 before he
Mhm.
pulled up. And so it's unfortunate. He has another long layoff. So now we're into this constant fluctuation of fitness. And he comes back, plays. How many games did he play before the hamstring injury? But regardless of that, he again has a muscular injury. So we're seeing the same cycle, and it's tough to get out of in the short term because a player he's now not physically fit or as fit. He's still reacclimating, right? But he's still playing in these high intensity matches. And so you have this mismatch. And the whole thing comes down to with Partey and the physio staff, it's a risk reward assessment of how much risk is there, how much reward is there, and what we're comfortable with. And so it's, even though he gets injured, it doesn't mean that he wasn't ready. It just means that it didn't go the way you wanted it to. There's always risk in these things, but there's a calculated risk.
Right. I'm glad you brought up the, the mental side of it, and Thomas Partey's, want to really impress his teammates and his team and be that game changer with the high price tag and a lot of the questions around his transfer anyway. And I always felt like, that want to really impress can sometimes bring on injuries because you're overcompensating and you're going a little bit overboard, just trying to do the most. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because I know I've been looked at crazy for saying that, but I'm like, you guys don't understand, when you're really trying to impress, sometimes you go outside of what's physically capable for you, and you can, agitate injuries or just, do too much.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And also, I mean, he's a competitor. He's a very, very high level competitor from what I understand. And so, and like you said, when you're a competitor, you're trying to impress, you're definitely gonna, redline. You're gonna go as hard as you can. And Tierney is the same way in terms of being a very, very high level competitor who always goes 100%.
Exactly. So is this something that we should be worried about with Thomas? Is this something that he can overcome? Should we be worried that after having relatively no injury record, all of a sudden he's having these niggly injuries? Is that something we should be worried about? Or with good therapy and us managing him better, it should be something that he should be able to overcome?
You should definitely be able to overcome it. I mean, it's hard right now because the schedule is so congested, and so it becomes difficult to manage it. You do the best you can. I mean, injuries are up across every league right now, so it's not just an Arsenal thing. It's not a Partey thing. The reality is these are players playing a lot of games with less recovery time than they've ever had. So that leads to increased soft tissue injury risk. It's not an Arsenal thing. It's not a Partey specific thing. It's a footballing in the current circumstances thing.
Awesome. So yeah, that's good to know that hopefully if things get back to normal, this should be something that he should be able to overcome. We've put a lot of money into Thomas Partey, and he's still at the peak of his powers. He should be able to recover from this, so I'm glad that you said that. So moving on a little bit just to Kieran Tierney. Unlike Thomas, Tierney came to Arsenal with a spotty injury record from his time at Celtic. And he actually came to the Emirates injured, if you remembered. So
yes,
he was out for a long time last season, but when he came back into the team post-lockdown, he became a huge part of the team and someone we absolutely need to be successful. This season, he seemed to be hitting some sort of form before he sustained a strain to the right lower leg, and that's kept him out for 5 games. How do you analyze Kieran Tierney's injury record? Is it a matter of the way that he plays, mismanagement by his coaches, or just bad luck?
So when he was at Celtic, he was playing through straight up injury because they needed him badly. Right. And that led to some pubalgia issues which he dealt with for a long time. Here, he's very, very fatigued. He's been playing a lot of minutes consistently. I was expecting him at some point to pick up something. And so it doesn't surprise me. Even so, originally they said it was a calf issue. Those scans came back clean. My guess, this is all the underlying cause of all this. He's in the red zone. He's fatigued. And so these muscular injuries, now I think Arteta said that it's around his knee. For me with Arteta, I take a lot of what he says with a grain of salt when it comes to medical stuff. And so that can just be a muscular injury, whether it's, around the knee. He would probably say it's the knee. So the way I see it with Tierney is that he's a player we've used a ton, and he's very, very tired. So naturally, he's picked up some muscle injuries. And again, it's just one of those things. For me, it's expected when you kind of understand, one, how many games he's played, how hard he plays. It's almost expected that at some point he's going to have to deal with something during the course of the season. And I think right now, with Cedric providing some decent left back cover, now might be the time where they're thinking, okay, let us give him some of that needed rest, so he can then finish out the season on the strong foot.
Yeah. So in your opinion, the best way to manage him in the future is just to make sure that we get good cover for him so that we can play him to kind of like he can play to the best of his ability without feeling like that if I burn out, what's going to happen? He can have somebody else that can come in as well. That's probably what we need to do.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And burnout's a great word that I think everyone can relate to. When you're constantly going hard all the time, at some point you do burn out. You need rotation, right? You need someone to step in for you. And like we said, Mikel touched on that. He said with Tierney, they're being overly cautious because he's not a guy you can be like, hey, KT, only go 70% here. He's like, no, I'm going 100, whether it's training, whether wherever it is. So that's just one of those things you have to be cognizant of. So when he does pick up anything, you kind of have to pull those reins back.
Makes sense. So just pivoting a little bit away from Arsenal and just to the bigger picture when it comes to the fixture congestion and the season, how has that really affected the fitness level of these top athletes? I think you posted a stat from Ben Deanery that said in February there was 1 injury per 63 minutes, which is like insane to me. Correct. What is your opinion on just the overall state of the league with the fixture congestion and stuff like that?
I mean, it puts a lot of burden on the players, right? You're trying to fit in a lot into a short amount of time, which puts the risk on the players. And then you have Euros, you have football this summer. So then you have a short turnaround time into next season, right? So until even next summer, not this fall, next summer, so that would be 2022 summer, you won't see any normalcy, in my opinion, for player injury risk because they're just playing so many games.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I think this is something that is unprecedented. Like nobody really knows how to deal with it because it's never really happened before. And you just see even teams like Liverpool, they're ravaged by injury, and that's really taken a toll on their ability to defend their title. And because they've had such a small squad, and I think it's unrealistic to think you're going to have so much squad depth, that even if you use them, it's going to take a toll on your season and affect your results. So I think this is just something that we're going to have to deal with, and in regards to Arsenal, make sure that we have suitable backups for Thomas Partey and Kieran Tierney and these, high energy, high passion players that really want to give 110% and just kind of wrap them up in cotton wool and see what we can do. I think that's pretty much where we are at this point.
Yeah, now I agree with that. Right now it's all about just managing the best you can. Like it's not ideal, obviously. And so, sure. What can you do to manage these guys the best? And then, you got Liverpool. I think one interesting point is to think about that a lot of us might not have thought about. When players are tired, they make worse decisions, which can lead to more rash tackles, which can lead to a Jordan Pickford challenge on VVD or something like of that nature, right? Yes. Or a player can't react as quickly and get out of a challenge. So that's the other side of fatigue.
The mental part.
Yeah.
The decision making.
Correct.
Wow. Yeah. Those are things that I think that we don't really take into account, and even it's just something that we're going to have to deal with. And really quick before, I know I only have you for a short amount of time, but I did just want to touch on really quickly Aubameyang and the fact that at 31 years old, we re-signed him up to a big contract, mostly based on what he had done up to that point. Do you think Arsenal was a little, I don't know what the word is, but they didn't think it through. They didn't do their due diligence in terms of thinking about Aubameyang physically and maybe the possibility of him falling off of a cliff like a lot of older players do. It seems like it goes pretty swiftly. And for me, I see physical decline. Is that what you see in Aubameyang, or do you think it's something else?
I don't really see physical decline, to be honest. And so I'm from the thought process that they did their due diligence. For me, when it comes to older players, you have to look at their training habits. From everything I understand about Alaba is that yes, he's a little bit of a joker off the pitch, but he's extremely committed when it comes to his training and his fitness. And that's what allows you to maintain rather than fall off that cliff later on. So those players who tend to fall off a cliff, those are the players who weren't committed early on in their careers. The work you put in early on and in the mid-20s, that really manifests when you're into your early and mid-30s. So
Wow.
from so with Aubameyang, my guess is they've seen his training habits and they understand just how committed he is. I haven't really seen any difference with him confidence-wise. Confidence-wise, in physically, the difference you see for me this year is in terms of confidence.
Wow. So just that mental part still can really affect the way you look, even physically, because he's losing like battles in terms of like running battles, sprinting battles with people. And maybe it is just a confidence aspect than his actual physical aspect, which is something that I didn't think about. Wow.
Yeah, because there was a time where I got plenty of DMs about Lacazette and people saying, "Oh, he looks so bad physically," and I said, to me, it's confidence. And then suddenly he gets ESR and Saka around him, and people won't start talking about him being a physical issue anymore, right? And so
Yeah.
so confidence can impact decision making. So for me to make a sprint, I first have to decide I have to make that sprint and how to do it. And so that's the first part of it. And again, it's a game of very, very fine margins at that level. So if you're not fully confident in what you're doing, it will impact you. It can often look like you're on a physical, decline, whereas when it's really not.
That's good. That's really good. So that that's given us some other things to consider when we talk about players and not making rash judgments about how they are physically and kind of take into account their mental as well, their confidence factor. So before I let you go, I do have a couple of different types of questions just because now I know you're an Arsenal fan. So I do want to know who's your favorite all-time Arsenal player?
Easy, Henry.
Henry? Yeah,
Easy, yeah,
that's a good one. That's a good one. How long have you been an Arsenal fan? If you don't mind.
Since 95, I was 9 years old.
Okay, awesome. And who do you think is going to win the league?
That's Man City.
Man City,
very just the way they're playing. This is in terms of defensively with Diaz, this is the best defensive team you could argue Pep has ever had. And so he has incredible defensive structure. Then of course we know how good they are going forward. And that's even with KDB having multiple injury spells out, and they're still playing this effectively. So imagine when he just had to pull the strings.
Wow. Yeah, I think so too. I think Man City, barring anything crazy, I mean, even they're dealing with their injuries as well, pretty well. And that's, they have quality squad depth, so that's helpful to them. And it's also helpful that Liverpool are going through such a bad time, so, but yeah, it's honestly, this has been a really good conversation. I know it was short, but we got to the point. And I think this is going to be really helpful for Arsenal fans to understand why Kieran Tierney and Thomas Partey have had such a difficult time with injuries so far in the season. So thank you so much for coming on. Can you let people know just one more time how they can find you on the internet?
Yeah, sure. So on social media, you can find me at 3CB Performance, 3 Chubby Beta Performance, whether that's on Twitter, Instagram, or on YouTube. On YouTube, I tend to do a little bit more deeper dive into player injuries or sports science, like skills and things of that nature.
Yeah, you guys, like I said, go and once you leave here, and before you leave here, actually, make sure you like and subscribe. You're not allowed to leave my channel without liking and subscribing. But then I want you to go to the description and click on Dr. Raj's YouTube channel. It's there. Check out his videos on Hazard. That's a really interesting conversation about Hazard, obviously, because he was such a good player, but obviously his physical ability has diminished a little bit, and that's probably affecting his career at Real Madrid at this point. Go check out his YouTube channel. It's so good. And follow him on Twitter. That's how I found him. And you guys, that's it for this episode. Thank you for joining me again. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye, everyone.